Is Jingliu still worth pulling in 2024? Well, you might be surprised what I have to say about that. So, let's go ahead and get into this thing because her rerun banner is in like 1 week. As many of you would already know, Jingliu has some of the coolest lore in the entire game, and had the longest running solo streak at the top of the DPS charts for 4 total patches, absolutely outshining anybody else in her path. Which is why it might surprise you when I say, I don't think it's worth pulling Jingliu anymore. And yeah, I totally get it. It's like a controversial take to say that a little bit right now, considering she was so good for so long, and she still is so good. So why am I saying something so stupid sounding? Well, there are a lot of things that maybe come to this conclusion, and I think if you thought about it for a little while, you might come to the same conclusion too. Let me explain. Let me explain myself, okay? But first of all, I just need to say this. If you like the character, pull the dang character. Don't let some idiot on the internet like me tell you what to do. If you like those old white-haired, like several hundred-year-old ladies like I do, then pull the character, bro. Okay, so let's go over some facts. Jingliu, really easy to use, really easy to build. There are some extra things you can do in combat to make her even better, especially with the character synergies like Huo Huo and Ting Yun, giving that extra energy, keeping her in her buff state. You could basically build a really good team and just hit auto and clear every single bit of the content in the entire game. So, why the heck is an idiot like me saying, I don't know if it's worth pulling for her or not? Well, I got one word for you that every single overly invested gacha gamer hates to hear, and that is power creep. There's obviously a lot more to this than power creep, but power creep, that's kind of like, that's the part we're going over right now. Anyways, the Honkai Star Roll's been out for nearly a year now, and if you could say that power creep has affected the game, as far as the DPS slot is concerned, it's happened roughly 3 times, but I think the first 2 weren't really that bad. I wouldn't even really call them power creep, truly. The first time was Danheng Bibiter Lune in 1.3, then Jingliu like shortly after in 1.4. They were pretty close, neck and neck roughly, for a very long time until Acheron arrived in 2.1, and she's kinda stolen the show. But Memory of Chaos wants us to have 2 teams to reliably clear the content. So, you do need 2 strong DPS characters, at least, if you're running hyper carry on both teams. So why can't you just run Danheng Bibiter Lune, Acheron, Sela, whoever on one team, and then Jingliu on the other? Well, you totally could. But I'm trying to get you guys to think about the future of this game. You guys invest a lot of time, and a lot of you invest a lot of money into this game, especially if you're going to be playing the game for potentially years, like a game like Genshin Impact has been out for so long. And I'm not trying to tell you to save up so much jade or to skip so much that you have stockpiles of jade. I'm just trying to say, if you're gonna pull on a reliable, hypercarry-esque DPS unit, I would suggest considering things that might come in the future, or even what's out right now. Y'all know Acheron's out right now, right? Hello? And dude, bro, do you really think that Sam is gonna release and be some flaming pile of old metal junk? Wait, they are a flaming pile of old metal junk. So, do you really think that Sam is gonna release and suck? No, they've been building Sam up for a little while now. There's even some twists and turns in the story and the lore, and it's all this big. They're building up to something cool with this character, dude. Just like they did with Acheron, just like they did with Jingliu, just like they did with Danheng and Bibiter Lune. You guys noticing a trend here? It seems to me like Acheron and maybe Sam, maybe somebody else, are likely gonna be Penaconies, Danheng, and Jingliu. The 2, at least 2, of the big powerhouses for damage in the Penacony block. And do I even know if Sam's going to be a playable character? I mean, come on, they're going to be a playable character. But do I know if they're going to end up being released anytime soon? No, I technically don't. And no, I don't want you to tell me in the comments. I don't care that you know how to use Google. I would like for it to be a little bit of a surprise. Thank you very much. So let's slap some more information on the table, okay, shall we? Jingliu's a rerun character. We already went over this and how it's more fun and interesting to pull on new characters coming out in the future or currently out right now, rather than a character like Jingliu from the past. She's still relevant, she's still meta, she won't need to be replaced for a very, very long time. but you might have that feeling of missing out, that FOMO, if you're one of the players not pulling on the new stuff and instead pulling on the old stuff from the past. And you also have to consider the release schedule of Honkai's Star Rail. Comparatively to Genshin Impact, another game made by Hoyoverse, Honkai's Star Rail is releasing one extra or like one additional 5-star every single patch. This means that there are going to be a lot more characters a lot sooner in Honkai Star Rail than there is in Genshin. Now, what's the point of me really bringing this up? Well, power creep is likely going to occur sooner than it did in Genshin. It does not guarantee that it will happen, but it is more likely to happen sooner. It also means that you're more likely going to see another DPS unit that's really good, really meta, come out pretty soon in comparison to something like Genshin, which would normally take a longer amount of time for it to occur. So the waiting game is not as long with Honkai Star Rail as it is with a lot of other gacha games. And so when I say you might want to consider pulling on Acheron right now, or maybe something coming in the future, it's not going to take that much time before some other fun DPS shows up in the future that you might also enjoy. Now, I'm going to reiterate that point. I'm not telling people to basically never pull on characters because there's always going to be something fun and interesting coming in the future. I'm just saying maybe you don't want to pull on the rerun from the past. Maybe you want to pull on something that's in the now. Just saying. And another thing that many of you already probably know are that support characters are better than DPS characters. You can pretty much use any DPS character that suits your fancy, slap a bunch of really well-built, really good supports behind them, and you can clear any content you want from the game. So what I'm basically saying is don't feel pressured into pulling for a flashy DPS character like Jingliu simply based on the history or the pedigree they have coming up to this point, because over time, history changes. When an old legend dies, a new one begins, and you don't want to be the person that pulls Jingliu and then like a month or two later, a totally new DPS character comes out that you like even more, but now you're low on Jade and you have trouble being able to pull that character with a guarantee. Imagine you lose your 50-50 to something like that. That would be a rough day. Another interesting tidbit about this is that the DPS slot in Honkai Star Rail is arguably the most easily replaceable slot in the entire game. There's more DPS characters than any other slot in the game, and there's more DPS characters coming than any other character type as well. Where you have a DPS character, there's like 50 other DPS characters waiting in line right behind it, ready to go and ready for you to use. And when you look back at the reruns that we've had so far, despite a very powerful DPS character like Dan Heng in Bibitur Lune being one of the reruns we've had, and Sela as well has already had her rerun, Kafka is actually the most valuable rerun character that we've arguably had, because you basically need Kafka to run the most powerful DOT teams available. It's a requirement pretty much. You can argue that Silverwolf follows right behind Kafka because she can literally change an enemy weakness. She has a ton of different debuffs, etc., etc. One of the best supports for like Dr. Ratio, Acheron, etc., etc. You get the point. It's these utility characters that are the most valuable rerun characters that we've had so far. And even though we've had strong DPS characters on reruns so far, they're not the most high value characters that we've had up to this point. Again, DPS characters are easily replaceable. What's funny about this is, if you end up pulling Jingliu, you're actually making a bad choice. Like, she's still so good, she's still so meta, she's still so hot, she's still so fine. Oh my, she is smoking, okay? You barely even have to think, and she's gonna clear the content, and she's gonna look good while she does it. So, is Jingliu worth pulling in 2024? Well, despite being a Jingliu main for so long, despite Jingliu's signature Lycone being the first signature Lycone I ever pulled in the game and not regretting that decision whatsoever, despite being a connoisseur of Jingliu, I'm gonna have to say no. I think it is more valuable to most players to pull on what's coming in the future or available right now, rather than pull on a relic from the past. Honkai Star Rail releases 2 5-star characters per patch instead of Genshin Impact's 1. This causes me to feel like what I'm pulling on in the now matters very much, and if I end up skipping a character, it's unlikely that I'll probably end up pulling on the rerun because I want to pull on what's new and fresh and hot and interesting. There could end up being exceptions to this for many players. Jingliu could be that exception for you, for example. Maybe you missed her, maybe you lost a 50-50, whatever, and now this is finally your chance to get the job done. And I respect you for that, and I implore you to go do that. I'm just making a very simple answer to a very simple question. Is Jingliu worth pulling in 2024? The short answer is no. But if you've watched the video up to this point, you know that it's a lot more complicated than that. Anyways, if you found any of this informative or helpful in any way, shape, or form, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.